The air hung thick, heavy with anticipation, a silent question mark hanging over everything. I had woken up on a plane, exhausted, seeking only oblivion, but instead, I stumbled into a destiny that felt both terrifying and inexplicably, undeniably, mine. 2 jobs, the endless grind of survival, had led me to a stolen nap on a stranger's shoulder, a shoulder that smelled of wildwood smoke and the electric promise of a brewing storm. Little did I know, that brief surrender would rewrite my entire existence. The scent clung to me even now, an invisible tether binding me to him, to this life. He had called me Little One, a term of endearment laced with a possessiveness that both chilled and thrilled me. The baggage carousel episode was a blur. The faces of those men with their faintly glowing eyes burned in my memory. Their deference, the weight of that single word, Luna, pressing down on me. It had felt like a brand, searing itself into my very soul. But now, in the quiet of the car, speeding away from everything I knew, I tried to process the enormity of it all. It was all a dream. Fantasy. I was just a girl. You fell asleep on the wrong shoulder, Little One, and now you're mine. His words echoed, a dark promise that has set something deep inside me in motion. The slick black SUV ate up the miles, hurtling us further and further away from my familiar reality, each passing second driving deeper into the unknown, into a world ruled by shadows and ancient pacts. I gripped my backpack tighter, the worn fabric a flimsy shield against the storm swirling around me. His voice was a low, velvet rumble, laced with an undercurrent of danger that set my teeth on edge. Sleep well? Sleep? Felt like eons since I knew true rest, since I let myself dream of anything beyond the next paycheck. It was all so surreal, too impossible to believe, and the fact that it was actually happening. The man beside me radiated an aura of power, an authority that seemed to warp the very air around him. It's like gravity. The scent of ozone and wood smoke was stronger now, invading my senses, stealing my breath. And those eyes, that molten gold, held a depth of knowledge, of ancient secrets that both terrified and hypnotized me. It was as if the universe itself had cupped my chin and whispered, "Stay!" And so I did. "My name," he'd said, softly, dangerously, "is Darius Wolf, Alpha of Manhattan." Wolf. The name reverberated through me now, a chilling recognition. I had heard whispers, rumors of a hidden world, of creatures lurking in the shadows of the city. Now it was no longer a myth, but the truth. Now here I was, a diner waitress, a cleaning lady, now destined to be what? A Luna? The moon goddess? We arrived, and I met all the people looking at me. She carries the bond within her. That's the only thing that truly matters. I wish I could leave, but it seems that the power of Wolf still have me. His hand shot out, not to harm, but to claim, his fingers curling firmly around my wrist. I jerked my hand back, gasping for air. What the hell was that? Then, he leaned in closer, his voice like a low growl under his breath. And his words now were a part of me that no one can take it from me. The bond. The moon goddess just marked you in front of witnesses. The air crackled with anticipation, a silent dare hanging heavy in the air. Their eyes, pools of molten gold and simmering rage, locked onto me, and in that instant, I knew my life was irrevocably altered. Lupin, 6 wolves, barely contained beasts cloaked in deceptive human forms, circled me like vultures eyeing a wounded prey. Their eyes gleamed with a feral intensity, claws subtly extended, a promise of violence barely concealed beneath a veneer of control. These were the very wolves who had mocked my presence at the table hours before, and now they regarded me as an unsuspecting lamb foolishly wandering into their den. "Stand here," a gruff voice barked, the scarred enforcer roughly dragging me toward the center of the room. My sneakers squeaked against the polished stone, the sound amplified in the suffocating silence. I wrapped my arms around myself, seeking a sliver of comfort in the face of impending doom. I am not one of you. I can't possibly fight like this." "That's precisely the entire point," he growled, impatience lacing his tone. Do you honestly believe being a Luna is all about fancy banquets and jeweled crowns? It's about blood, about brutal combat, about commanding absolute obedience. If you can't hold your own here, within these walls, you certainly won't survive for long outside of them. A wave of mocking laughter slithered through the pack, tightening the knot of dread in my stomach. Before I could protest, a dark-haired woman stepped forward, her lips curling into a predatory smile that sent shivers down my spine. Allow me to test her mettle. The enforcer hesitated, but Darius's voice, cutting through the shadows, sealed my fate. Do it. My head snapped toward him. He leaned against a massive stone pillar, arms crossed. His golden eyes locked on me with a gaze that felt like a branding iron searing through my fragile facade. He wouldn't intervene, wouldn't save me. The dark-haired woman lunged, her movements too fast, too precise. One moment she was 3 feet away, the next her hand clamped down on my shoulder, shoving me roughly onto the cold stone floor. A sharp jolt of pain shot up my arm, and gasps mingled with cruel laughter echoed around me. I scrambled backward, palms stinging against the rough stone, chest heaving. She stalked toward me, her claws now glinting ominously in the dim light. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear anything else. I can't do this. I'm not a fighter. I'm nothing compared to them. But then her earlier words echoed in my mind, just a waitress, diner grease, can barely look us in the eye, and something deep within me snapped. When she lunged again, I ducked instinctively, driven by pure animal reflex rather than any learned skill. Her claws scraped against the stone floor, sending sparks flying. Seizing the moment, fueled by adrenaline, I grabbed a training staff propped against the wall and swung it wildly in her direction. Connected solidly with her ribs, she stumbled backward, momentarily stunned, and the room fell silent. Her head snapped up, eyes glowing crimson, pure, unadulterated rage emanating from her in palpable waves. She launched herself at me again, moving faster, more aggressively. The staff was wrenched from my trembling hands, and my back slammed painfully against the cold stone wall. Her claws lifted, poised to strike at my throat. Enough! Darius's voice shook the very ground, stopping her in her tracks. The dark-haired woman froze, her claws hovering inches from my skin, her breath ragged. The golden fire in his eyes blazed with raw power as he stepped forward, his movements slow and lethal. I specifically told you to test her, he snarled, his voice echoing like thunder. Not to tear her apart limb from limb. The air vibrated with barely restrained power, his alpha command rippling through the hall. Every wolf lowered their gaze in submission. The dark-haired woman's hand trembled as she slowly pulled back, her shoulders bowing under his immense authority. I pressed myself against the wall, chest heaving, body shaking uncontrollably from adrenaline. Darius stopped in front of me, his imposing presence filling the remaining space, his hand bracing against the wall beside my head. His gaze burned into mine, furious yet oddly proud. You fought back, he said, his voice low and rough. Even though you were terrified, even though you're untrained. That's more than most would have done. I swallowed hard, words caught in my throat. You consistently think you're fundamentally weak, he continued, his voice softening, meant only for me. But you don't break, and that's what makes you a Luna. The bond between us pulsed, a warm, dangerous heat coiling low in my stomach, undeniable. For a reckless heartbeat, I wanted to lean into him, to let the consuming fire engulf me completely. But I tore my gaze away, choking on the truth of the situation. I didn't ask for any of this. His jaw ticked. He lifted his hand, gently brushing a stray lock of hair from my face, the touch searing my skin, almost tender in a way that terrified me even more than his anger. No, he murmured, his voice low. But you're mine now, and very soon, the entire world will know it. If the moon goddess irrevocably tied your soul to someone you feared, someone you swore you could never possibly love, would you fight the bond until it broke you? Or would you surrender to the inevitable, not knowing if that surrender meant salvation or utter destruction? The city's relentless noise was a physical assault after the suffocating quiet of the penthouse. Frustration gnawed at my carefully maintained composure. The cacophony of horns, the subway's tremors, the ceaseless chatter of strangers assaulted my senses. For the first time since that accursed flight, I was surrounded not by ravenous beasts, but by ordinary humans. A fleeting sense of liberation washed over me, or perhaps it was merely a temporary illusion. I clutched the cool edge of the familiar diner counter, my gaze fixed on the worn coffee pot I had filled countless times. Even my boss, a gruff man hardened by years of slinging hash, barely registered my return in my disheveled uniform. It felt surreal, as if I hadn't just been plucked from reality and thrust into a terrifying alternate existence. No pack, no domineering alpha, just me, a regular girl scrubbing tables and earning next to nothing in tips. And yet, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. My chest felt tight, as if an unseen force pressed down on it. Every clink of silverware, every whiff of day-old coffee, every flicker of the harsh fluorescent lights, felt jarringly out of sync. Too loud, too sharp, too utterly meaningless. Because I could still feel him. The bond, like an invisible leash, throbbed insistently around my heart, pulling me, demanding my attention, relentless in its presence. I knew Darius Wolf was out there somewhere in the sprawling city, watching, waiting, and the scariest part of it all was that a piece of me actually craved being near him. "Orders up, Mia!" The sudden shout startled me out of my daze. I grabbed the plates from the kitchen window, forcing my legs to cooperate as I carried them to a nearby booth. The customers barely gave me a second glance. Ordinary, faceless, invisible. This was supposed to be safety. This was the life I knew. But my reflection in the window caught my eye, revealing a gaunt, pale face, dark circles etched beneath my eyes, and something deep inside whispered a painful truth. I don't belong here anymore. The realization sent a jolt of fear through me, so intense that I nearly dropped the precariously balanced plates. Then, the bell above the diner door chimed, announcing someone's arrival. I didn't even need to look. I felt it. The bond surged like a raging fire through my veins. My body stiffened as Darius Wolf filled the doorway, his broad shoulders practically scraping the frame. Golden eyes, piercing and intense, scanned the room, silencing conversations and thickening the air with an unspoken tension. "Please," I murmured under my breath. Not here. Not like this. But he never listened. He never listened to me. He crossed the diner in 3 purposeful strides, his mere presence sucking the air right out of my lungs. He didn't touch me, but he didn't need to. The heat radiating from him made my knees want to give out. "You ran." His voice was low, but it carried through the room like a rumble of thunder. I glared at him, slamming the plates down on the table harder than necessary. "I walked to work. That's not running." His jaw ticked, a sure sign of barely suppressed anger. "You don't get to pretend this is your world anymore." "This is my world," I hissed, my voice louder than I'd intended. Heads turned, customers whispering, my cheeks burning with shame. I lowered my voice, struggling to maintain some semblance of control. "This is all I have. I don't know how to be what you want me to be." For the first time, something flickered in his eyes, something raw, almost vulnerable. But it vanished in an instant, replaced by his usual steely gaze. Before he could respond, the bell chimed again. A man walked in, ordinary, clean-cut, human. His gaze swept over me, lingered a fraction too long, then narrowed as he looked at Darius. I froze. Not a friend, not a stranger, but a threat. I didn't know how I knew, but I did. The bond instinct. My skin prickled, my pulse racing. Darius shifted slightly, his body subtly blocking mine. A growl rumbled in his chest, so low that no human could possibly hear it. The man smiled thinly, ordered a coffee, and sat down. But his eyes never left us. Darius leaned close, his voice a dark promise against my ear. "This city is full of enemies who would bleed you dry just to get to me. You think you can hide in this life, but all you've done is paint a target on your back." I swallowed hard, fighting the tremors in my hands. My old world wasn't safe anymore. My new world terrified me, and caught between the two, I felt like I was already drowning. Chapter 8, Hunted in the City. The diner's neon sign buzzed faintly as I stepped out into the night, the exhaustion weighing heavily on my bones. The air was cool, carrying the mingled scents of rain-soaked concrete and street vendors packing it in for the night. I pulled my jacket tighter around me and started down the sidewalk. For a moment, it almost felt normal. Just another night after a long shift. Almost. But the weight of his presence lingered, an invisible burden. Even though Darius hadn't followed me outside, I had practically begged him not to, and to my surprise, he had stayed behind, though his golden gaze had burned holes in my back as I left. I should have felt relieved. Instead, every shadow seemed to stretch too long. Every footstep echoed too sharply. Halfway down the block, I felt it. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, my chest tightening with a sudden, suffocating dread. I wasn't alone. I glanced over my shoulder. Nothing but a guy in a baseball cap walking a little too slow, a woman dragging a suitcase, a car idling at the corner. Ordinary. All ordinary. So why were my instincts screaming danger? Quicken my pace. The guy in the cap did too. My throat went dry. I ducked into an alley, hoping to cut through to a busier street. But the alley was narrow, damp, the flickering light above casting more shadows than illumination. My footsteps splashed in a puddle. Then I heard it, a second set of steps. Light, deliberate, too close. I spun around. The guy in the cap stood at the mouth of the alley, a cruel smile tugging at his lips. But his eyes, they glowed faintly amber in the dark. Not human. You smell like him, he said softly, his voice tinged with an accent I couldn't quite place. The Alpha's little human mate. What a gift you are. My heart slammed against my ribs. Stay away from me. He laughed, low and cruel, and stepped closer. Do you know what they'll pay for you? Packs that would tear Wolf apart just to see him bleed. His smile widened, sharp and menacing. You're not a mate, you're leverage. Panic clawed at my throat. I stumbled back, but the alley dead-ended behind me. My fingers fumbled for my phone, but it slipped from my sweaty palm, clattering uselessly to the ground. He lunged, and then the world exploded. 1 second, the stranger was reaching for me. The next, he was slammed into the brick wall with such force that the ground shook. A snarl ripped through the air, raw and feral. Darius. His hand clamped around the man's throat, golden fire blazing in his eyes. You dare touch what's mine? His voice was a low growl, each word a blade. The man choked, gasping for air, claws flashing, but he never landed a blow. Darius ripped him off the wall like he weighed nothing and hurled him down the alley. The man hit the pavement hard, scrambled to his feet, then bolted into the night with a sound that was more animal than human. The air hummed with a heavy silence afterward. My chest heaved, my knees weak, my back pressed against the cold, unforgiving brick. Darius turned to me, fury still etched into his features, his chest rising and falling like a barely contained storm. His eyes softened almost imperceptibly as they met mine. You could have been killed. I swallowed hard, tears pricking my eyes despite myself. I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask to be mine, he cut in, stepping closer, his voice rough with something more than anger. His hand slammed against the wall beside my head, effectively caging me in. Say it. Say you're mine. The bond pulsed hot and wild between us, a magnetic pull I couldn't fight. My breath came in shallow gasps. My lips trembled uncontrollably, my body betraying me with how much it wanted to surrender. But my pride snapped like a whip. I don't belong to anyone. His jaw clenched. For a long moment, we just stared at each other, me trembling, him seething, both of us caught in the crossfire between defiance and desire. Finally, he exhaled slowly, pulling back just enough to let the night air rush between us. His voice dropped to a whisper, deadly quiet. Then you'd better learn fast, because whether you accept it or not, every wolf in this city knows the truth, and they'll come for you again. Chapter 9, The Gathering. The penthouse ballroom was a world away from the cracked diner tiles or the damp alley where I had nearly been abducted just hours before. Here everything gleamed. Glass walls offered panoramic views of the glittering Manhattan skyline. Chandeliers dripped with crystal like frozen moonlight, and tables groaned under the weight of silver and fine wine. But beneath the veneer of elegance lurked something darker. Wolves. They filled the room in human form, yes, but their presence pressed against me like invisible claws. Laughter was too sharp, smiles too knowing, eyes that glowed faintly when the light caught them just right. The most powerful shifters in New York gathered under one roof, and all of them were staring at me. She's human. She won't last a month. She doesn't even smell like us. Their whispers rippled through the room like knives through silk. My dress, hastily chosen from some designer's closet in the penthouse, suddenly felt like a costume, an imposter's skin. I tugged at the hem nervously, my pulse hammering in my ears. Then his hand found mine. Darius stood beside me, his black suit impeccably tailored to his frame, power radiating from him like tangible heat. His golden gaze swept the room once, silencing the whispers instantly. When his eyes dropped to meet mine, softer now, my chest constricted. "Stand tall," he murmured. "They'll only respect you if you make them." "I don't even respect myself right now," I whispered back, my teeth chattering despite the warmth of the room. A shadow of a smile tugged at his lips, gone as quickly as it came. He led me forward. At the center of the room was a dais, its silver surface etched with ancient runes, where only alphas and lunas stood during gatherings. My stomach dropped when I realized that was where we were headed. The air shifted, conversations hushed, every gaze pinning me like a trapped animal. Darius stepped onto the dais, his voice ringing out like thunder. "Tonight, the bond has spoken. The moon goddess has chosen. This is Mia, my mate, your Luna." The silence that followed was deafening. Then the jeers began. "She's weak. She's human. She'll break the bond. She'll destroy us all." The words slammed into me harder than any physical blow. My throat burned, tears pricking my eyes. I wanted to run, to vanish back into the anonymity of the night where no one knew my name. But then something inside me sparked. I thought of the alley, of claws nearly at my throat, of Darius tearing the world apart to keep me alive. I thought of the way he'd said mine, like it was both a curse and a vow. My voice shook, but I forced it out, cutting through the noise. "Maybe I am human. Maybe I don't belong in your world. But if the moon goddess bound me here, then I'm not going anywhere. So either you learn to live with me, or you waste your breath trying to tear me down." The room stilled. Dozens of wolves, stronger, older, deadlier, stared at me with open contempt. But a few, just a few, bowed their heads, and a few eyes softened. A ripple of reluctant respect moved through the crowd. Beside me, Darius's jaw tightened, pride flashing in his golden eyes. His hand squeezed mine just once, grounding me. The gathering ended with toasts, political maneuvering, and hidden barbs exchanged beneath polite smiles. But for me, the night burned itself into my bones. Because for the first time, I hadn't run. For the first time, I'd stood as something more than a waitress, more than a scared human. For the first time, I felt like Luna. Chapter 10. Secrets in the Dark. The city never truly slept, but the penthouse was quiet. Too quiet. I curled up on the edge of the massive bed, moonlight spilling across the pristine sheets. My body ached from the tension of the gathering, from standing in front of a room full of wolves ready to tear me apart with nothing but their words. Yet exhaustion eluded me. My mind raced, replaying every moment, every whispered threat. Darius hadn't come to bed. I had heard him earlier, his voice low, issuing clipped commands, a growl barely concealed beneath his words. He was downstairs in his study, the walls humming with secrets I wasn't allowed to touch. The exclusion gnawed at me. I wasn't stupid. I knew the world I'd been thrust into was fraught with danger. But being kept in the dark while every predator in the city now knew my face felt like a betrayal. Finally, I couldn't bear it anymore. Barefoot, I crept down the curved staircase. The heavy oak doors of his study were ajar just enough for voices to slip through. "The shadow fangs won't stop," one man whispered. "They saw her tonight. They'll test her. If she fails, they'll use it to rally every rival pack against you. Then they'll die for trying." Darius's voice cut back, sharp as steel. A pause. "With respect, Alpha, she's human. If she falters, she won't." His voice dropped, laced with a dangerous certainty. "The bond won't let her. I won't let her." My chest tightened. Another voice, lower and more hesitant, spoke. "There is another matter, the prophecy." The room snapped into silence. Then, slowly, Darius spoke again, each word laced with a chilling warning. "Say it again and you'll regret it." My heart hammered in my chest. Prophecy? What prophecy? The conversation shifted, too soft for me to decipher. My hands trembled against the cold doorframe. This wasn't just about pack politics. There were layers, hidden agendas, wars I couldn't see, dangers I couldn't name. And Darius, he was deliberately keeping them from me. When the voices dimmed, footsteps approached. Panic surged through me. I bolted back up the stairs, slipping into bed just before the door clicked open. He entered silently, shedding his jacket, his shoulders tense, the air around him still vibrating with command. For a moment, I almost asked, "Tell me the truth. Tell me everything." But I didn't. Instead, I lay there, eyes closed, breath shallow, pretending to be asleep. The mattress dipped under his weight. His hand brushed my hair back gently, lingering against my cheek. "You don't know what you've done to me," he whispered, his voice raw in a way I'd never heard before. "You don't know what it means, and I can't." He stopped himself, a low growl catching in his throat. "I won't lose you." The words burned through me. I wanted to turn and demand answers, but fear held me frozen in place. Because what if the truth shattered everything I'd barely begun to build? So I stayed still, trapped between the warmth of his touch and the chill of his secrets, knowing one thing for certain. The bond might tie us together, but secrets could tear us apart. Chapter 11. The Shadowfangs Strike. Morning arrived sharp and gray, storm clouds smudging the skyline. I tried to lose myself in coffee and toast in the cavernous kitchen, but the memory of last night's overheard whispers gnawed at me relentlessly. The prophecy, Darius's fury, his stubborn refusal to tell me anything. The more I replayed it in my mind, the more the walls of the penthouse felt like a gilded cage. When the guards weren't looking, I slipped out. Just a quick walk, I told myself. Just a breath of normal air. The city roared around me, alive with the clamor of horns and chatter. Hot dog carts hissing steam into the air. For a fleeting moment, I almost managed to fool myself into believing I was just another New Yorker hustling down the sidewalk. Then the world tilted on its axis. It started as a prickling sensation at the base of my spine, the same eerie tug I had felt in the alley. I slowed my pace, glancing nervously behind me. Nothing, just crowds of people, umbrellas bumping into each other, a businessman barking into his phone. But the bond hummed, low and urgent, like a drumbeat in my blood. Asterisk danger. I quickened my pace, my heart hammering in my. The air hung thick and heavy, a palpable tension woven with the scent of rain and something feral lurking beneath. A casual graze, a featherlight touch against the back of my hand, sent a jolt through me, far too intimate for comfort. I recoiled instinctively. "Going somewhere, little moonbeam?" The voice, smooth as polished silver, dripped with amusement, a mocking caress that sent shivers down my spine. I whirled around, my breath catching in my throat. A figure leaned against a lamppost, shrouded in shadow, clad in dark leather that seemed to absorb the very light around him. His eyes, twin pools of molten silver, gleamed with a predatory hunger that made my blood run cold. And he wasn't alone. Two more shapes detached themselves from the encroaching darkness, circling me like sharks scenting blood. My pulse hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the silence. I bolted, adrenaline surging through my veins. The crowd thinned as I neared a dark alleyway. Fatal mistake. They followed, their footsteps pounding a terrifying rhythm behind me, closing the distance with terrifying speed. "Little human," one hissed, his voice a guttural growl that scraped against my ears. "You think the bond makes you untouchable?" Claws scraped against the unforgiving concrete, inches behind me. I stumbled, my palms slamming against the slick, wet pavement. A sharp, agonizing pain shot up my arm. Before I could scramble to my feet, a hand clamped down on my wrist, a vice-like grip that threatened to shatter bone. His breath, hot and fetid, ghosted against my ear. "Let's see how much the alpha values his toy." White-hot terror seared through me, paralyzing me with its intensity. Then the world exploded. A snarl, primal and terrifying, ripped through the suffocating darkness of the alley. The wolf in front of me froze, his eyes widening in stark terror just moments before he was hurled sideways, crashing into a metal dumpster with a deafening clang. Darius. But this wasn't the cool, composed alpha from the penthouse, the one who wore tailored suits and a mask of icy control. This was something far more ancient, more dangerous, the untamed wolf unleashed. His eyes blazed with a primal rage, his aura suffocating, the air crackling with untamed power. His claws glinted in the dim light as he tore into the shadow Fong who had dared to touch me. The others lunged, but Darius was faster, brutal, merciless. A single blow sent one crashing to the ground, his bones snapping like brittle twigs. The last attacker, overcome by terror, turned tail and vanished into the labyrinthine streets of the city, leaving behind only the stench of his fear. Silence descended, heavy and suffocating. I pressed myself against the cold brick wall, trembling uncontrollably, unable to draw a steady breath. Darius turned slowly, his chest heaving, splattered with blood that wasn't his. His eyes locked on mine, still blazing, still more wolf than man. "Are you hurt?" His voice was ragged, dangerous, a low growl that vibrated in the air between us. I shook my head, tears blurring my vision. I just wanted air." His jaw clenched, the muscle ticking violently. In 2 strides, he was in front of me, his hands gripping my arms. Not gently, not cruelly, but with a desperate intensity that burned into my skin. "You don't get to leave without me. Do you understand? Not here, not ever." The bond flared between us, binding me to the command in his voice, an invisible chain forged in fire. My heart twisted with equal parts anger and a dangerous longing that threatened to consume me. "I'm not your prisoner," I whispered, my voice trembling despite my efforts to control it. His eyes darkened, a storm of fury and something softer, something almost vulnerable, warring within him. He leaned in, his forehead almost touching mine, his voice a low, guttural rumble. "No, little moonbeam, you're far worse than that. You're mine." Chapter 12, The Shattered Bond. The penthouse felt colder that night, as if the city itself had withdrawn its warmth in response to the violence it had witnessed. I sat on the edge of the bed, arms wrapped tightly around myself, replaying the events of the alley over and over in my mind, the claws, the snarls, the brutal efficiency with which Darius had torn through the shadow fangs, a force of nature unleashed. But his words echoed louder than the violence, reverberating within me like a discordant chord. "You're mine." Every part of me still recoiled from them, not just from fear, but from something deeper, something I desperately didn't want to acknowledge. The door creaked open, breaking the suffocating silence. He stepped inside, his shirt clean now, but the faint, metallic tang of blood still lingered in the air around him, a haunting reminder of the darkness he carried within. His gaze flicked over me, relief flashing briefly across his face before hardening into a mask of controlled anger. "You could have been killed." His tone was a mixture of accusation and raw anguish, a volatile cocktail that made me want to both lash out and curl up into a ball. "I was just walking," I snapped back, exhaustion making my voice harsher than I intended. "I didn't realize that stepping outside meant painting a target on my back." He growled low in his throat, running a frustrated hand through his dark hair. "That's exactly what it means. You think you're just a human in this city? You're not. You're mine." that makes you prey to every wolf who wants to see me bleed. I stood, trembling, but refusing to shrink away from him. Then tell me the truth. Tell me why they keep coming for me. Tell me what you're hiding, Darius. His eyes darkened, shuddering his emotions behind a wall of impenetrable steel. Silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating, pregnant with unspoken words and buried secrets. For a heartbeat, I thought he would deny it, would continue to shroud me in darkness. But then he spoke, his voice quiet, almost like a reluctant confession. The moon goddess didn't just bind us, Mia. My breath caught in my throat, my heart hammering against my ribs. What? He met my gaze, his golden eyes fierce, haunted by shadows I couldn't comprehend. There is an old prophecy, a tale whispered only in hushed tones. It speaks of a human who would be bound to an alpha, a human whose bond could either unite the packs, ushering in an era of unprecedented peace, or destroy them, plunging the world into eternal chaos. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me, throwing me off balance. My chest constricted, and I struggled to draw air into my lungs. That's why they're after me. That's why you didn't want to tell me. Darius's jaw tightened, the muscle clenching visibly beneath his skin. Because if they know, if they truly understand the power you hold, they'll never stop hunting you. And if you run, if you reject this bond, the chaos it unleashes could rip this city, this entire world, apart. I staggered back, the weight of his words crushing me, stealing the air from my lungs. So all of this, the gathering, the wolves circling, even you keeping me here, none of it was ever about me. It was all about some stupid prophecy. His hand twitched at his side, as if he desperately wanted to reach for me, to offer some comfort, but didn't dare, afraid of the consequences. No, Mia, it's about both. The goddess chose you for me, whether I wanted it or not. The prophecy is just an excuse, I whispered, my voice breaking with a pain that resonated deep within my soul. An excuse to chain me to you, to control me. Pain flickered across his features, gone in a flash, replaced by a wall of impenetrable steel. You think I wanted this, Mia? His voice cracked with something more raw, more vulnerable than rage. You think I wanted to be bound to someone who could destroy everything I've built, everything I've fought for? You think I don't hate the way you unravel me, the way you make me question everything I thought I knew? Tears blurred my vision, hot and stinging. My voice shook as I pleaded. Then let me go, Darius. Set me free. Silence descended once more, heavier than before. The bond between us pulsed, electric and agonizing, a constant reminder of our intertwined fate. His golden eyes locked onto mine, and for the first time, I saw it, a flicker of something unexpected, something that contradicted everything I thought I knew about him. Fear. Not fear of the prophecy, not fear of his enemies, but a deep primal fear of me leaving, of losing something he hadn't even realized he possessed. He turned away, breaking eye contact, his fists clenched at his sides, his voice low and broken as he whispered, I can't. The words crushed me, because I realized the truth that resonated within them. Neither of us could escape the bond's grasp, no matter how much we might want to. But that didn't mean I forgave him. The bond burned hot and bitter between us as the distance stretched. Unspoken words hanging in the air like barbed wire, cutting deeper than any claws ever could. Chapter 13, Blood Moon Rising. The city was bathed in an eerie crimson glow under the rising blood moon. From the balcony of the penthouse, I saw them, a horrifying spectacle unfolding below. Wolves pouring through the streets, shadows moving too fast for human eyes to track. The air vibrated with snarls and howls, a symphony of primal rage, and distant sirens wailed uselessly, a mournful counterpoint to the impending chaos. The Shadow Fangs had arrived, their numbers a legion, their presence a suffocating blanket of dread. The prophecy wasn't just hushed whispers anymore. It was all-out war, a battle for survival on a scale I couldn't even begin to comprehend. Darius stood at the railing, his shoulders squared, a fortress of unwavering resolve, his aura a wildfire of fury and indomitable command. His pack warriors flanked him, shifting restlessly, the glint of their claws and eyes reflecting the eerie moonlight like shards of ice. I hovered near the doorway, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it would shatter my ribs. "They're coming for me?" I said, my voice trembling uncontrollably, barely a whisper. Darius didn't turn, his focus unwavering. "They're coming for us, Mia." The bond pulsed between us, raw and electric, a conduit of fear, anger, and a strange, unsettling longing. I hated him for keeping secrets, for chaining me with possessive words like mine, for dragging me into this world of shadows and violence. And yet, when I saw the encroaching tide of wolves below, something primal within me screamed to be closer to him, to seek the protection of his strength, to find solace in his unwavering power. The pack looked to their alpha, waiting, ready for his command, ready to tear the city apart if that was what he ordered. Darius finally turned to face me, his golden eyes blazing with an almost incandescent light, a molten fire that seemed to burn through me. "Stay inside, Mia. Don't move." "No," I blurted out, surprising even myself with my defiance. "If they're here for me, then hiding won't save us. It'll only prove them right, that I don't belong here, that I'm just a weak human." His jaw clenched, a low growl rumbling deep in his chest, a warning sign I knew I should heed. "Mia!" The shattering crash of glass cut him off mid-sentence. The shadow fangs had already breached our defenses, infiltrating the penthouse with terrifying ease. They exploded into the room, a whirlwind of claws flashing, snarls tearing through the air, disrupting the fragile peace we had managed to maintain. Pack warriors lunged to meet them head-on, and the elegant penthouse instantly transformed into a brutal battleground. Furniture splintered, priceless chandeliers swayed precariously, showering us with a glittering rain of crystal shards, and the coppery scent of blood filled the air, thick and suffocating, a grim harbinger of what was to come. One lone wolf broke through the fray, his gaze locking on me with savage triumph, his eyes burning with a predatory hunger that made my blood run cold. He lunged, a predator finally claiming its prey. I froze, paralyzed by fear, my breath caught in my throat, unable to move, unable to scream. The bond roared through my veins like a raging inferno, a surge of raw power that threatened to overwhelm me. And then Darius was there, a blur of furious motion, a force of nature unleashed. He slammed into the attacking wolf midair, claws raking, fangs tearing, protecting me without a moment's hesitation. The wolf collapsed to the floor, twitching in agony, his crimson blood staining the pristine white marble, a stark contrast against the elegance of the penthouse. "Run, Mia!" Darius shouted, his voice raw and commanding, a desperate plea above the chaos. But I didn't run. Something snapped inside me, a surge of defiance, a strength I hadn't known I possessed overriding my fear. I grabbed a shard of broken glass, the sharp edges biting into my palm, and swung it wildly as another shadow fang came at me, his eyes burning with hatred. It wasn't elegant, and it certainly wasn't strong, but it was enough to slash his face, causing him to stagger back with a howl of pain and surprise, giving me a precious moment to regain my footing. Adrenaline flooded my veins, my body trembling uncontrollably, but I stood my ground, refusing to cower in fear. The fighting raged on, the room a swirling blur of fur, blood, and fury, a chaotic dance of life and death. Every time I stumbled, every time I felt my resolve waver, the bond surged, yanking Darius toward me, his presence acting as my anchor, shielding me from the encroaching darkness. But every time he bled, every single time he faltered, I felt it too, a searing pain that mirrored his own, as though his wounds were being inflicted on my own body. It dawned on me then, breathless and shaking, that this wasn't merely about a prophecy or some abstract notion of raw power. It was about something far more profound, something far more terrifying. If he were to fall, I would shatter, my existence irrevocably broken. If I were to fall, he would unleash a cataclysm, setting the world ablaze in his grief and rage. And maybe, just maybe, that had been the moon goddess's intention all along, a twisted game of cosmic proportions, a gamble with the fate of the world hanging in the balance. Chapter 14, The Bond Unleashed. The battle descended into utter pandemonium, a maelstrom of violence and desperation. Wolves collided with each other, their claws screeching across the polished marble surfaces, leaving bloody trails in their wake, staining the elegance of the penthouse with the grim reality of war. The chandelier suspended above swayed precariously, threatening to crash down upon us, showering us with a glittering but deadly rain of glass. And at the heart of the storm, at the epicenter of the chaos, stood Darius. He fought with a ferocity that bordered on the supernatural, his wolf desperate to break free from its human cage, his golden eyes burning with a primal, untamed light, a terrifying glimpse into the ancient power that resided within him. But even he was taking a beating, his strength slowly waning under the relentless assault. Deep, brutal gashes marred his chest, crimson staining his jaw, a testament to the ferocity of the shadow fangs. For every enemy he managed to bring down, two more seemed to materialize to take its place, their numbers seemingly endless, their hunger for blood insatiable. With each tear of his claws, each moment of vulnerability he displayed, a jolt of agonizing pain ripped through me like a lightning strike, my knees threatening to buckle, despite the fact that my skin remained unmarked, untouched by the physical wounds he was enduring. The bond was more than just a connection. It was an inextricable link, tethering us together, wound for wound, breath for breath. Our fates intertwined in a way I was only just beginning to understand. Mia! His roar echoed through the penthouse, his voice a desperate plea above the din of battle, his eyes locking onto mine, searching for something, perhaps a sign of hope, perhaps a reason to keep fighting. You have to run, Mia. Get out of here. No! I yelled back, the word tearing from my throat, fueled by a stubborn defiance that surprised even myself. My hand trembled around the shard of glass, my chest rising and falling in ragged gasps, my body trembling with a mixture of fear and adrenaline. If I run, they win, Darius. If I run, you... My voice cracked with emotion. Choked by tears I refused to shed. One of the shadow fangs saw its chance and lunged at Darius's unguarded back, his eyes burning with triumph. I screamed, a primal sound of terror and desperation, the bond surging through me like liquid fire, hot and searing, igniting something deep within me. And before I could even consciously think about what I was doing, I threw myself forward, propelled by instinct alone, driven by a force I couldn't control. I had no claws, no superhuman strength, no special training to prepare me for this moment. But I had the bond, and in that moment it was all I needed. The instant my skin made contact with his, my hand brushing against his bloodied back, something within us ignited, a spark that became a raging inferno, a wave of raw power that radiated outward. A shock wave of untamed energy erupted, sending the nearest wolves flying off their feet, crashing against the walls with bone-jarring force. Silver light blazed around us, cutting through the oppressive darkness like concentrated moonfire, a beacon of hope in the face of despair. Gasps and snarls echoed throughout the room as every wolf froze in place, their eyes wide with shock and instinctive awe, bowing before something that transcended mere power, something ancient and divine. The prophecy. I could feel it in my bones, coursing through my very blood, a destiny I could no longer deny. The goddess's divine plan etched into every fiber of my being, a fate I was destined to fulfill. The bond wasn't just a chain that bound us together. It was a weapon, a union forged to incinerate falsehoods, to unite raw strength with an unyielding heart, to bring balance to a world teetering on the brink of destruction. Darius's hand found mine, his claws still dripping with blood, his chest rising and falling rapidly, his grip tight and reassuring. His eyes locked onto mine, a mixture of fierce determination, stark terror, and a desperate longing swirling within their depths, a vulnerability I had never seen before. This is it, Mia, he growled, his voice trembling as if he despised the very words he spoke, as if he hated the choice he was about to force upon me. You have to choose now. Fight it, end it all, and walk away free, leaving me to face the consequences or surrender to it, embrace the bond and become mine forever with all the dangers that entails. The room fell silent, every enemy present awaiting my answer with bated breath, their fates hanging in the balance. The weight of the choice burned within me, a searing pain that threatened to consume me. Freedom, my previous life, my old world, the safety of solitude, the comfort of anonymity, all lay on one side of the scale. On the other lay this Darius, danger, blood, fire, the bond that both terrified me and yet somehow made my soul feel impossibly whole, a connection that transcended logic and reason. The moon goddess's whispered advice brushed against my ear like a gentle breath, a comforting presence in the midst of the chaos. One choice, Mia. Unite or destroy. The fate of the world rests in your hands. I stared at him, tears streaming down my face, my heart simultaneously breaking and being pieced back together, torn between the life I knew and the destiny that awaited me. And then, with the chaos swirling around us and the prophecy hanging precariously by a thread, I stepped closer, bridging the gap between us. I reached out, my bloodied hand trembling, and pressed it against his chest, over his racing heart, and whispered the only truth that truly mattered, the only answer that resonated within my soul. I choose us, Darius. The bond roared its agreement, a surge of power that reverberated through my very being. A blinding light exploded outward, moon silver consuming the room, banishing the shadows and illuminating the darkness. Every wolf present dropped to their knees, howling in pain and submission, their eyes forced downward, unable to withstand the intensity of the light. The shadow fangs recoiled as if burned, their snarls turning into ear-splitting screams as the light seared through them, scattering their forces and breaking their will. Darius's arms closed around me, crushing me to him, desperate, as if he'd finally been given something he'd never dared to hope for, something he never thought he deserved. And for the first time, I didn't pull away. I held on just as tightly, burying my face in his chest, seeking solace in his strength, and accepting the bond that had nearly broken me completely, knowing that it had ultimately remade me into something stronger, something more complete. Chapter 15. Luna of New York. The battlefield lay in ruins, a testament to the brutality of the night's events. The penthouse, once sparkling with chandeliers and polished marble, was now cracked and bloodied, a stark reminder of the violence that had unfolded within its walls. Wolves limped through the wreckage, tending to their wounded, their faces etched with exhaustion and pain. The shadow fangs were gone, their threat shattered beneath the radiant silver light that had poured forth from the bond, their forces scattered and broken. And in the middle of it all, amidst the chaos and the devastation, I stood with Darius, my hand still clasped firmly in his, the last vestiges of moonlight fading from our skin, leaving behind a faint, ethereal glow. The pack's eyes were fixed on me, not with scorn, not with suspicion, but with pure, unadulterated awe, a reverence that made me feel both humbled and terrified. They had witnessed it all, the unleashing of the bond, the power it held, the prophecy fulfilled before their very eyes. The human girl the moon goddess had inexplicably chosen, the one who had stood against the darkness and emerged victorious. Their voices began to rise, one by one, low and reverent, a murmur that gradually grew into a chorus. Luna! The word rippled through the room, spreading like wildfire, echoing off the broken walls and shattered chandeliers, until the entire pack chanted it in unison, their howls shaking the broken glass still lodged in the windows, their voices resonating with a primal power that sent shivers down my spine. My throat constricted, my heart pounding in my chest, overwhelmed by the weight of their expectations. Just hours ago, I had been practically invisible, just another tired face in a city teeming with millions, lost in the anonymity of the urban landscape. Now, their unwavering faith pressed down on me, heavy and unyielding, a responsibility I wasn't sure I was ready to bear. Darius's grip on my hand tightened reassuringly, a silent gesture of support, a promise that I wouldn't have to face this alone. I looked up at him, searching for reassurance in his eyes. Blood streaked his face, a war paint that only enhanced his rugged beauty, and his chest heaved with exhaustion, a testament to the battle he had fought. But his eyes, his usually cold and calculating eyes, were molten gold, softer than I had ever seen them before, a warmth that melted the ice around my heart. "You chose me, Mia," he said, the words barely audible, raw with disbelief, a vulnerability he rarely allowed himself to show. "I chose us, Darius," I corrected gently, my voice trembling slightly, but firm in my conviction. "But don't make me regret it. Not for a single moment. No more lies, no more cages, no more secrets kept hidden in the shadows. If I'm your Luna, if I'm going to lead this pack alongside you, I do it on my own terms. I make my own choices." For a fleeting moment, I thought he might argue that the alpha within him would rebel against my demands, that he would try to assert his dominance, to reclaim control. But instead, his lips curved into a genuine smile, a rare and precious gift. Not a smirk of arrogance, not a calculated command, but something incredibly rare, something undeniably human, a smile that reached his eyes and crinkled the corners. "Then the pack has their Luna," he said, his voice regaining its commanding tone as he turned to address the warriors who still knelt before us, his gaze sweeping over them with pride and authority. "And the alpha has his mate." A cheer erupted from the pack, wild and fierce, shaking the already damaged walls of the penthouse. Their voices filled with relief and elation. Wolves howled their approval, their voices blending seamlessly with the relentless heartbeat of the city itself, a symphony of strength and unity. I should have felt overwhelmed, buried beneath the weight of their expectations, crushed by the responsibility that had been thrust upon me. But instead, standing there shoulder to shoulder with the man who simultaneously terrified and electrified me, the man who had unlocked a power within me I never knew existed, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, something that had been lost in the shadows of my past. Stronger, seen, chosen. And when Darius leaned down, his forehead resting lightly against mine, his breath warm against my skin, his voice so low that only I could hear, the bond between us hummed with a thrilling heat that promised this was only the beginning of our journey, a new chapter unfolding before us. "You may not believe it yet, Mia," he murmured, his voice a husky whisper that resonated deep within my soul, stirring emotions I couldn't name. "But from the moment you fell asleep on my shoulder, defenseless and trusting, you became mine. Not because of prophecy, not because of fate, but simply mine in a way I never expected, in a way I can't explain." I closed my eyes, the chaos slowly receding, the world narrowing down to just him, to just us, to the bond that had nearly broken me completely, and yet had ultimately remade me whole, stronger than ever before. For the first time, I didn't fight it, didn't resist the pull, didn't question the destiny that had chosen me. I embraced it wholeheartedly, surrendering to the connection that bound us together, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, side by side, as Luna and Alpha, as mates, forever bound. The air crackled with savage growls and piercing howls as the shadow fangs descended, their sheer numbers a terrifying sight, a dark tide threatening to engulf us all. Distant sirens wailed, a useless soundtrack to the impending doom, a mournful lament for the lives that would be lost. The prophecy, once whispered in fearful tones, had exploded into a full-blown war, a battle for survival that would determine the fate of our world. Imagine a world where shadows dance with moonlight, where ancient prophecies intertwine with raw, untamed hearts. Can you feel the pull, the irresistible allure of a destiny waiting to be claimed? Energy exploded, scattering darkness like shattered glass. A silver light, pure and intense, bathed the room, silencing growls and striking awe into every creature present. It was the prophecy. I felt it resonating deep within, a divine plan imprinted on my very soul. The bond, more than just a connection, pulsed as a weapon, a force designed to merge wild strength with unwavering love, to obliterate the lies that held us captive. Darius's hand clasped mine, bloodied and trembling, his eyes, a storm of longing and terror, locked onto mine. "Choose," he rasped, the word heavy with a pain he fought to conceal. "Fight, end this, and walk away free, or surrender and become mine forever." Silence descended, thick with anticipation. The weight of his words settled upon me. Freedom, anonymity, or him, the danger, the exhilarating fire of a bond that both terrified and completed me. A whisper, soft as a moonbeam, brushed my ear. Unite or destroy. Tears streamed down my face as I looked at him, my heart breaking and healing in the same breath. I stepped closer, pressed my hand against his chest, and whispered the truth that had always been there. I choose us. The bond roared, a wave of power that consumed the room. Shadow fangs recoiled, shrieking in agony as light shattered their will. Darius pulled me close, desperate, as if he had finally dared to hope, and I held on just as tightly. The penthouse was a battlefield. Shattered glass glittered amidst the bloodstains, remnants of a war fought and won. I stood with Darius, the last traces of moonlight fading from our skin. The pack's gazes fixed on me, filled with reverence. Luna, they murmured, the word rippling through the room until it became a unified chant, shaking the very foundations of the building. Just hours before, I was invisible. Now their faith pressed down on me, overwhelming and profound. Darius's grip tightened, a silent reassurance. His face was streaked with blood, his chest heaving with exhaustion, but his eyes, usually cold and calculating, were molten gold, softer than I had ever seen. You chose me, he said, his voice raw. I chose us, I corrected gently. But don't make me regret it. No more lies, no more cages. If I'm your Luna, I do this on my own terms. For a moment, I expected resistance, the alpha within him to bristle at my demands. Instead, a genuine smile touched his lips, a smile that reached his soul. Then the pack has their Luna, he announced, his voice regaining its authority. And the alpha has his mate. A wild cheer erupted, shaking the penthouse. Standing shoulder to shoulder with the man who both terrified and electrified me, I felt a sense of belonging I had never known. Stronger, seen, chosen. He leaned down, his forehead resting against mine, his voice a low murmur, the bond between us humming with an exhilarating heat. You may not believe it yet, he whispered, his breath warm against my skin. But from the moment you fell asleep on my shoulder, you became mine. Not because of prophecy, not because of fate, but simply mine. I closed my eyes, letting the world fade away, shrinking down to just him, to just us, to the bond that had almost destroyed me, and had ultimately made me whole. For the first time, I didn't fight it. I embraced it completely, breathing in the scent of pine and something wilder, something undeniably Darius. The scars of the battle faded into the background, replaced by a new kind of ache, a longing to lose myself in the warmth of his embrace, to explore the depths of his soul. The promise hung in the air, thick and heavy. This was only the beginning.